Caring for elderly parents, a typical day in the home. This presentation and photos are with my mother and grandmother, in which my mother is currently caring for my grandmother on a 24-hour-a-day basis in her home, providing all of the needs necessary for her health and safety in her environment. I am very familiar with the care that is necessary to be provided to the elderly due to caring for my grandfather, my grandmother's husband, who had passed away whenever I started the bachelor's program. There are many roles that a caregiver plays in the home when caring for an elderly parent. One of the most important roles is that of a nursing profession, not necessarily being a qualified nurse or registered nurse, but just knowing how to properly manage their medication, look for signs of illness, or following doctor's orders when presented at the physician's office. That is just the beginning of the many roles that occur on a daily basis in the home. There is, of course, general housekeeping, such as vacuuming, mopping the floors, dusting, changing the beds, washing, and many other things in the home. Of course, everybody has to eat, so there are daily meals that need to be prepared according to sometimes special diets. There is also bookkeeping, which involves balancing checkbooks, paying bills, along with making sure that the insurance is paying appropriately according to what the insurance is supposed to pay, and that she is not getting overbilled for services that were not provided. Gardening is a choice in our family. It is something that we choose to do, but it also provides food for the family and is a huge responsibility in caring for the garden. Transporting grandmother to and from the physician's office to get her hair done and an occasional meal out is also a part of the responsibility, although this is not done on a daily basis, along with the occasional problems that will arise in the home, which are never foreseen, such as plumbing problems or any other problems such as equipment failure with a stove, a microwave, a washer, dryer, or any other thing in the home. The typical time for getting up in the morning is between 5:30 and 6. On this particular day, my mother, the caregiver, got up at 5:35. At this time, my grandmother is still in bed, so my mother is allowed to be able to have a shower to herself, hopefully without being disturbed with a phone call or an emergency call button that is placed on my grandmother's bed for assistance needed while she is taking her shower. During this time, she has about 30 minutes prior to getting my grandmother up to start getting the day started with dressing, meals, and all of the other regular routines of the day. At this time, as you can see, the two beds are empty. My mother sleeps in the same room with my grandmother because it is necessary to get up with her in the middle of the night and to be able to hear her call if needed for an emergency. As you can see, my grandmother sleeps in a hospital bed, so it is easier and equipped to get her in and out of bed, which does make it easier on the caregiver and my grandmother. After my grandmother gets up out of bed in the morning, she then will go to the bathroom in her pajamas, and this is when she will use the restroom and the caregiver will get her clothes out for the day and assist her in getting ready. As you can see, my grandmother needs assistance in walking with a walker or wheelchair at some times. And in the background, you will see a handicap accessible shower that has needed to be installed prior to taking care of my grandparents to make it accessible for them to remain in the home instead of going to a nursing home or another facility. This is another security feature that is in the restroom. As you can see, there are handrails at the bottom of the screen that are on the toilet and a buzzer for assistance if needed. And if you notice, there's a telephone in the bathroom. Well, my grandfather was never a fan of changing things that didn't need to be changed, and they still do have a landline, unlike many of us. So if it was necessary, she could pick up the phone and dial 911 while sitting on the toilet. These are my grandmother's legs after getting up in the morning. She wears supports on her knees because she does have severe osteoarthritis and has pain in her knees, and this allows her to be able to walk and not creak as much and allows more stability to prevent a fall. She also has an ulcer on the back of her leg, which is where the nursing part comes in, because the bandages do need to be changed on a regular basis, and it does need to be watched for infection and have regular communication with the physician's office according to how this is doing, along with random blood checks and visits to the doctor. Again, this is my grandmother's bed with a call bell on the bed. This was actually my granddad's decision to put these on the beds, and it was his way. This is really just your typical doorbell that is placed on the bed, that if she happens to be in bed and nobody is in the room, say they've left the room in order to go get something to eat or something to drink or use the restroom themselves, she will be able to call them at any given time in order to ask for further assistance. Well, now that my grandmother is dressed, there is still work in the house to be done. The caregiver then returns to the bedroom to make both of the beds and make sure that they are clean and ready for the next night's sleep. My mother prepares her medicines according to doctor's orders on a weekly basis for the morning and the evening. As you can see, there are multiple pills that are to be taken both during the day and in the evening, and she sets these up on a weekly basis so that way it does not have to be done on a daily basis, which does allow her a few more minutes of free time, but not an excessive amount. My grandmother has, with assistance and her walker, gotten to the table in order to eat breakfast. She is looking at her pills to make sure they are the pills that she is supposed to take, even though she does suffer from some memory problems due to having a stroke. She is 93 years old, that I did not mention in the past, but she still does know if there is a pill that is present that she's not supposed to be taking. So she tries to keep everybody in line and make sure that everybody's doing the right thing as well. And she is basically sitting there getting ready to take her pills and waiting for breakfast. Breakfast has to be prepared by the caregiver, which is a different type of breakfast every day of the week, anywhere from cereal to bagels to toast and jelly and muffins, biscuits and gravy, pancakes, eggs and bacon, according to what she really wants. There are certain days of the week that they do tend to cook, and then there are other days of the week that they tend to eat cereal. If you notice, my grandmother has her bib, which in the nursing world is really considered a lap blanket, so to speak, over her to prevent her from soiling her clothes. But then also she has that on the end of it on the table because it's so long, and it allows her to drop any food that won't hit the new floor that has just been put down. And if you also notice, she has her bowl really close to her, so that way it prevents her from dropping anything down the front of her. After breakfast, my grandmother then is escorted into the bathroom to brush her teeth. And as you can see, she does have what we call a gait belt on. And this is to assist her in getting up from being seated. And then it is also something that the caregiver can use to hold on to while she's walking to possibly avoid a fall. Okay, now that grandmother is taken care of for the day, or for this part of the day, she is then returned to her chair recliner in the living room to watch the morning news, and the caregiver then will start any and all laundry that needs to be completed for the day. Yeah, I talked about those unexpected things. Well, we have a leak in the basement now, and this is my mother vacuuming up water in the basement. With all the rains that we've had recently, one would assume that this is a basement that has leaked due to the rain, which has happened many times in the past. Well, guess what? That's not the problem. The week prior, when my mother and I tried to take a relaxing vacation and have self care for both of us, they had plumbing problems. And the plumber came out and ran a Roto-Rooter through the tubes in the pipes in the bathroom, and this is what resulted from it. So every time they flushed their toilet, they were getting raw sewage in the basement, and did not realize this until they had returned for a few days, because the basement is not somewhere that the caregiver typically goes on a regular basis. As you can see, my grandmother is sitting cheerfully in the living room with her feet propped up, relaxing, with the TV on, but continuing to watch what's going on in other parts of the home as well. This is another part of the care. This is a lift chair that the doctor had prescribed that makes it easier on her and the caregiver to get up, along with having her feet propped up to avoid swelling in her knees and ankles throughout the day. Well, this starts the process of, now that grandmother is in her chair, my mother will then review any monthly bills that have come for prescription medication, or from a doctor or emergency room visit, or possibly a hospital stay, which doesn't happen very frequently, but we'll go over the bills to make sure that they are getting charged the appropriate amount, and that insurance is paying the appropriate amount, and that nobody is paying more than what they should be. And then from there, the morning consists of paying any bills that are necessary, and balancing the checkbook and doing any other banking that might need to be done. There are many challenges when taking grandmother to the doctor. First, we have to get out of the house by going down the wheelchair ramp and be very careful that she does not fall, since she does have very brittle bones and has already had a broken hip 2 years ago. So she is getting assisted by a part-time caregiver and getting into the car. And now you can see she's into the car, and she is on her way to the physician's office. The same care will need to be given in getting her into the doctor's office and back home again. Well, now it's time for lunch. Time has flown by this morning. Lots of things have been accomplished, and this is a pot of fresh zucchini and squash from the garden, which is cared for on a regular basis as well. And this is part of the lunch for the day that is provided by the primary caregiver. Here you see the entire lunch that was provided being meatloaf, corn on the cob, fresh vegetables from the garden. So you can see that the primary caregiver has taken quite a bit of time in preparing this meal, but also, as my grandfather always liked, to have leftovers. So there will be leftovers for a meal for the following day. So that does help with the caregiver not having to provide a fresh cooked meal every single day. Again, another picture of my grandmother. Not seeming by looking at her face that she's very happy sitting here at the table, but my grandmother is a very happy person when it comes to food and does love to eat. So she's just attempting to cut up her squash in order to feed herself. For the most part, she is able to feed herself and cut her own food. She's just not able to prepare it. So somebody has to prepare all of her foods and beverages and place them at the table in front of her prior to eating. Oh, finally, to the rescue. The call in the morning to the plumbing department was successful. We now have a plumber who has come into the home in order to repair the sewer issues that are going on. And this is just a picture of what actually has been done for the repair in order to be up to standard, because my grandfather did it many years ago and honestly it wasn't up to standard. So he's trying to replace it to that point right now. This is a picture of my grandmother walking with her wheelchair, going into the living room. As you can see, she still has her gait belt on for assistance, and the caregiver is behind her taking the picture very fastly. That's the reason why it is blurred, because typically we don't get too far away from her whenever she is walking. So we want to make sure that she doesn't trip over anything and fall. Well, time has flown by this afternoon. My grandmother has had a nap in her recliner, and the caregiver may or may not have sat down that day in order to get a break, depending upon what other things needed to be done in the home. With the plumbers being there this day, it is very likely that she did not get to rest very much in the afternoon. And this is my grandmother sitting in her wheelchair just before the evening meal. As you can see here, this is just 2 days worth of dishes that the caregiver has put in the dishwasher. Luckily, they have a dishwasher and she doesn't have to do those dishes on her own, but still yet, the dishwasher does have to be loaded and unloaded at least every other day, if not more frequently. There have needed to be many changes that have been made in the house since my mother started taking care of my grandmother. One of the things that physical therapy had recommended was that the door be taken off of the bathroom and a curtain provided, because that would allow them to have more access into the bathroom, allow more room into the bathroom because of the way that the door opened, and the doorway was not a wider doorway because it is an older house. So this doesn't provide much privacy for the person that is in the bathroom, which this is my grandmother's bathroom, but still yet, this is the way that it has been remedied to take care of the problem that physical therapy suggested be resolved. And this is in the evening. As you can tell, my grandmother is on her way back to her recliner with a part-time caregiver, getting her to her recliner, and it looks like she's in her pajamas now. So it's after dinner, and she has had her shower by the part-time caregiver and is getting ready to sit down and relax prior to bed. And you can see the foot of my mother, who finally now has gotten a break and able to sit down for maybe 15 or 20 minutes, maybe 30 at the most, while my grandmother's getting her shower, before she'll need to get up and go to the next chore. Oh, finally, it's evening time, and it is time for Grandma to go to bed. She is actually in bed at this time. It's hard to see her, but she is in bed asleep. It would be approximately 8 o'clock to 8:30 at the time she goes to bed, and her walker is there by her bed, along with the other bed that my mother will get into whenever it is time to for her to go to bed. She generally would stay up for another hour or so and watch TV or have some relaxation time for herself or take care of any other chores in the home that also needed to be taken care of. This evening it is approximately 9:30 p.m. and this is the time that my mother is going to bed. So she has basically been up caregiving for my grandmother since 6 o'clock in the morning, and going nonstop virtually all day, as she does many days, without regard to taking breaks or having much time to herself, because it takes very much time to care for a person 24 hours a day. Oh, did I forget to say? It's now 2:30 in the morning and my grandmother just woke my mother up and said that she needed to go to the bathroom. So, break in sleep in the middle of the night, time to get up and go to the bathroom. So, the caregiver would get up and take my grandmother to the bathroom and come back and go to sleep. And as we all know, most of us don't lay down and go right back to sleep. And we know that she's only got a few hours until she's got to get up again. So these next few hours of sleep probably are going to be a restless type of sleep for her. It is important to remember the stress that is put on the caregiver in these times of providing round the clock care. Self care is something that is hard to manage to squeeze in when caring for the elderly parent. This is an essential part of the caregiver's mental health and well being. There are very random short trips away for a long weekend, which include visiting family members, shopping, and other activities such as pampering oneself. There are very few times that the caregiver is away from my grandmother, along with providing the 24-hour care. She also does work a PRN position in surgery as a nurse at the local hospital. So there are days that she considers breaks to be able to go to work, and considers that part of her self-care as well.